Here we go. You know what it is. It's the Deeper Dive presented by Awesemo.com. Dave Loughran and Adam Shaw are bringing you a 10-game slate Wednesday, January 9th, 2019. How you doing, man?
Been better. Hanging in there, though.
That's good. That's good. How much weed did you smoke before the show?
A lot.
Obviously joking. You got cold there, yeah?
Yeah, I got a cold. Woke up this morning and just felt it started to pick up during the show yesterday. I started like having to hold back sneezes while you were talking and muting myself a lot, and it just carried over.
Yeah. You had said over under 2 minutes before, or 2 minutes on someone asking whether or not I'm high. Like if you were to look at your eyes, if you were to pull up YouTube right now and look at it, because we're cropped closer to the screen.
Right.
Yeah. You look like you just ripped a gravity bong out of a bathtub. Yeah. Okay. So let's get it started. We were talking before we went live that it's one of these slates where you have 10 games and you have a few games with pretty low totals at 1, 2, 3, 4 of them up above 224. But the kind of interesting thing is there's a bunch of games where instead of it being like, oh, I'm not playing anybody here, it's actually like, oh, most games aren't really the best game stacks, but there's players from almost every one of these games that you can pick and choose that make for pretty solid options tonight.
Yeah, it's a really weird slate. Like as far as appealing games, there's only really one or two where, both teams are really, I guess, just the Philadelphia-Washington game where both teams are like play at an appealing pace and are appealing teams to take guys against. But when you factor in pricing and everything, there's just a lot of plays from across the slate. I think it's going to be a pretty good slate, especially for tournaments. I don't think that ownership should be too concentrated, and where it is, I think there's a lot of really good pivots.
All right. Let's jump into it then. 10 games. We got about an hour and 10 minutes here. We'll start with Washington and Philly. Now, by the way, you have two games that start at 7, one that starts at 7:30. And then, what is it? 2 at 8. No, sorry, 3 at 8, 1 at 8:30, 1 at 9, 1 at 10, 1 at 10:30. So it's scattered quite a bit, as we've seen throughout most of the week. But you've got Washington at home hosting the Sixers, second of a back-to-back, but also a home-and-home series. These two teams played in Philly yesterday. And had it not been for Bradley Beal, this would have been a 50-point game. I mean, he was the only player that looked even remotely decent outside of some Jan Mahinmi blowout run. But here we go again. Interestingly, though, the Sixers are 4-point favorites. It opened, I think, like 2.5. Then it was 3.5. It's up to 4. 4-point road favorites. Same matchup as yesterday. I think, the Embiid with the blowout run, it certainly hurt. He played 24 minutes. Jimmy Butler got it going early on, shot 8 of 9 on the day. And Ben Simmons was once again very efficient with his time. I just don't know if you can glean so much from it from yesterday, being that a lot of these guys really didn't play many minutes at all. And like Landry Shamet was shooting out of his mind for a career game in his rookie season. So I'm looking at this as just a fresh slate before yesterday. And not saying, okay, what happened in yesterday's game? I'm going to look at it this way. Although, and then I'll hand it over to you. Jan Mahinmi, the bulk of his run came in that fourth quarter doing blowout runs. So we may have been wrong on that.
Yeah, it was. I really don't know what to make of his rotation. Like he subbed in basically to start the second quarter, but Sam Decker for a couple of minutes was playing center with Embiid out there. I'm assuming that doesn't happen again today, but still, just because of the way that Embiid's rotation goes, it's tough to get Mahinmi above 20 minutes, even if you were to play every minute that Embiid plays that isn't part of Thomas Bryant's like initial rotation. So unless we get news that Mahinmi's starting, I'm still cutting him back to like 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I also think Redick's status is kind of important here because this has been a spot where, or this is a team where Brett Brown likes using Redick and Embiid together with the scrubs off of the bench, right? Shamet's usually not shooting that well. Usually the bench is a huge liability. So with no Redick, I would expect things to change up a little bit here. But let's break it down. We'll start with the Sixers here on the road. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you as far as the fresh slate goes. Still a great spot for Embiid. Still really like him. It's obviously a different slate, though. Like yesterday, you basically just had Embiid and Westbrook at the top. Now you have Harden and Anthony Davis, not to mention Giannis on this slate. So it's entirely different as far as being able to get Embiid in the lineups. I had him in like 65% of my DraftKings lineups yesterday, and I can almost guarantee I'm nowhere near that on this particular slate. But it's obviously not because I dislike the matchup. So if I get to him, I'm perfectly happy with that. I haven't made FanDuel lineups yet, so there's a chance that I get to him, more there. But on DraftKings, not really a priority for him, even though I love the spot. Butler, again, he's cheap enough where he has a nice ceiling, but in terms of median projection, he kind of just seems correctly priced. Ben Simmons, I think, is a little bit too cheap just because it's such a great matchup for him as far as, Washington struggling defensively, but also struggling to rebound, struggling in rim protection. It's just a really good spot for Simmons. I think it's pretty likely that we see him come out and dominate this game again like he did yesterday.
Dude, I definitely like this spot for Ben Simmons. Let me move my camera here a little bit so you don't only see half of my face. Simmons on FanDuel too, 9,300. He's not really that expensive. I think you pointed this out yesterday too. I mean, look, over the last or since Christmas, since the 27th, Ben Simmons is, and I turned my camera the wrong way. I think I'm an idiot. Whatever, it doesn't even matter. You know who's talking. It's not going to help, Tom, because I just moved it again. Oh, yeah, it should. Never mind. Whatever. You might have to do that one more time. Thanks, though. So, okay, with Simmons, he just fixed it, and I fucked it up again. I'm sorry, man. You're going to have to adjust it one more time for me. Looking at Simmons, though, you have 28% usage rate over his last 6 games, and he's actually beginning to shoot a little bit from mid-range. Not a lot, but he's actually doing it. And even with Butler on the court over that span, he still has 26% usage, 41% assist rate. His per minute production's at like 1.37. So Simmons is very capable of having a solid game. And if this does stay close, I mean, they've played each other twice this season. Neither of these games have been close, but look, I'm not going to say, okay, that means that they're definitely going to blow them out tonight. You have no idea, man. They've blown leads so many times this year to worse teams. Simmons is actually the guy that stands out to me the most because with Embiid, that means you're getting away likely from Harden. With Simmons, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to do that.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And you mentioned JJ Redick. If he plays, I think he's interesting just because it's a perfect matchup for him. Like he would basically be the guy that Landry Shamet was last night, just coming off screens and taking wide open threes against this defense.
Yeah, and before the questions come in, just keep in mind, like Landry Shamet was out there getting additional burn, and not just additional burn, but additional opportunities because he couldn't miss, right? Like he was just knocking down 3 after 3. You're going to feed a guy in that case. But it would be unrealistic to expect him to come out there and do the same thing in 24 minutes again today. And then if Redick plays, it's a non-factor to begin with. Right.
Yeah. Even if Redick's out, like I'm not going to Landry Shamet.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's the only reason. I mean, if Redick was playing, I wouldn't even mention him.
Right.
I want to get it in before the questions because I'm sure some may ask. It's too much of a risk. Guys that rely, solely on 3-point shooting can just absolutely destroy you, especially when they play on a team with, 4 or 5 other guys that are, going to see far more opportunities than they are and just leave them with the scraps on nights where they're not knocking down 8 threes. On the other side, though, we've got Washington at home this time. I still have some interest in Bradley Beal. It's one of these spots where you're not forcing him in, or I'll speak for myself. I'm not forcing him in because shooting guard actually has a lot of quality options, but he is, He's still good. He still has a nice ceiling here. We know that Philly's been burned by these type of play. Look, he had 28 real points in 31 minutes yesterday. If the game's close, doesn't matter if it's a back-to-back. He's going to get upwards of 38, 40 minutes. I still think there's meat left on the bone for Bradley Beal at $8,900 on DraftKings, not $10K on FanDuel, of course. What are you doing with the Wizards here? And by the way, we got a solid 19 minutes from out. Even if that game didn't blow out, he was on pace to play like 22 minutes. Ridiculous.
Yeah, so I'm with you on Beal. Obviously he was like the one guy who actually had a good game yesterday too, and it's obviously the same matchup that we liked him in yesterday, like him again today. Should play around 40 minutes if Washington can actually keep this one close, and it's just a really, really good spot for him. As far as Porter, he's questionable with a hand injury now, which he sustained, I think, in the first half yesterday. They mentioned during the broadcast that he had his hand wrapped at halftime. So
yeah, and the Sixers broadcaster actually kept saying, "Man, he can't be right. He's too good of a player to be looking this terrible." Because even his shooting was off. You could tell in the second half.
It was weird though, because in the first half he was missing all his open shots. Then he had his hand wrapped. Then in the second half he started knocking down threes. So it was weird. I'm assuming he plays since he played in the second half yesterday. But obviously that's important news. If he does play, I'm projecting him for like 26 minutes because I have no idea what else to do with him. And his price tags come up to where he's perfectly fine, but he's not someone that I'm going to have massive amounts of like I did yesterday.
I personally don't even think he's perfectly fine at this rate. I just don't see the need. What is he, 59 on FanDuel? It's not to say that I don't think he can have a decent game, but I look in that price range and I just see guys that I don't, number one, have to worry about if Scott Brooks is even going to give him the run. And Scott Brooks, generally speaking, with these guys, gives them the minutes, like the Porters and the Beal and the Wall. Like, they get their run. It hasn't been that way with Porter. There's just too many question marks surrounding him right now for me to get there. Anything. Oh, Sazcrib has a comment. He said, Porter said after the game that his thumb was still numb. He also got x-rays. Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, I saw that. The reason I still have some interest in Porter, like despite the concern over the minutes, is just the role he's playing right now. Like, he has a 29% usage rate since he came back, but he's also playing point guard when he's out there with that second unit. He's got the ball in his hands a ton. He's facilitating. So I think that, like, we don't know when Brooks is going to give him the minutes. We don't know really anything. And when he has said he's going to give him the minutes, he still hasn't. But after he was really popular yesterday and just completely shit the bed, I like the idea of having Otto Porter in his first 30-minute game at small forward playing point guard, basically.
Sure. Yeah, look, if the thumb is actually not an issue, I know he's not on the injury report, but if it's actually not an issue, then I'm not going to fault you for that. And you want to get on before it happens rather than wait till it happens and then try and catch the wave. I just think there are a lot of question marks here. That's all. But sometimes that works with you. Anything else for Washington? Because for me, I just don't see the prices are all at a point now where I'm saying I can get better value elsewhere and I don't have to pay a premium for them, or at least an elevated price point. Whereas, 2 weeks ago, these guys were all the best value for a good straight week, but that's not going to last forever. And it hasn't.
Yeah, I'm getting a decent amount of Jeff Green on DraftKings, but it's not something that I think is necessarily a priority. I just think that there's a little bit of upside for him.
All right. You want to move on to Boston, Indiana?
Yeah.
All right. Well, the Miles Turner, we got the news pretty early here. That's pretty nice. He is out. Boston 7-point favorites at home, 215.5 total. Look, two good defensive basketball teams. I mean, both of these teams rank pretty high in defensive rating. Actually, pulling it up now because I had lost the page and I forget the exact number. But over the past 30 days, defensive rating wise, the Indiana Pacers rank 5th and Boston ranks 8th, whereas pace wise, the Pacers rank 21st and Boston ranks, where are they at? 16. So I'm curious. Kyrie Irving is pretty affordable, and I love the guy in competitive games because I don't have to worry about his minutes being limited. Domantas Sabonis, though, is probably the guy that I have most interest in, just because if he's going to play 30-plus minutes, which I expect to be the case, I think Indiana keeps it close enough. I'm perfectly happy getting to a guy that's got, a 20+% rebounding rate, 26% usage, and an elevated or additional minutes starting at center, even if it's not the greatest spot. Break this game down as a whole, because I don't think we're going to be getting to too many individual pieces.
Yeah, I don't think there's a ton here either, but the guys you mentioned, I agree completely. Sabonis is still a little bit underpriced for his starting role without Miles Turner. Should get 32 to 34 minutes at center here. And he's just such a well-rounded player in terms of what he produces for fantasy. You know, he picks up assists, he rebounds well, he can score. He really just does everything when he's out there. So it's tough not to like him at his price tag. Derek Hollison's questionable. If he were to sit, obviously it opens up Corey Joseph and Aaron Holiday minutes, but still waiting on that news. On the other side, though, Kyrie, especially on FanDuel, he's only 8,400 over there. I think that's just a really, really cheap price tag for him. The spot obviously is not great, as you said, but it's just too cheap of a price tag. You know, he's 300 less than on DraftKings, and that really stands out.
It does. I actually began writing him up today in the deep dive and got rid of it. Put him as an honorable mention because I still like him, but it's more so that I don't know how much I get to, but I really do think he's affordable to a large extent everywhere. I mean, 84 on FanDuel is, as you pointed out, really, really nice. But even 87 on DraftKings isn't crazy. I mean, just look at Kyrie Irving. If it's a close game, he's playing 35 plus minutes and he offers you, you know, the 55, 60 plus fantasy point production. He can get you there, no question. I like to avoid him in blowouts because I know his minutes can be so restricted. But yeah, Irving is in a really nice spot. And I would have to think, get your take on this as well, that Kyrie Irving goes vastly overlooked today. We have him right now projected at 6% ownership, 5% ownership with the Awesemo.com ownership projections.
Yeah, I think you will on DraftKings. Not so sure about FanDuel because the price tag just jumps out.
Yeah. So I was specifically talking about DraftKings where people will likely look elsewhere. On FanDuel, we have him way higher, 24%. But I don't think that transfers over to DraftKings whatsoever.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there.
Anything else from this game, or we pretty much hit on the guys that we're looking to target?
Not really. I mean, Oladipo torched this team earlier this year, but he's just playing so differently now that it's tough for me to get there on this slate with so many different options. Nothing else really stands out.
Yeah, nothing stands out. Oladipo struggled enough where he's just been too volatile. I mean, volatility is good, but I still think we can get similar upside at a similar cost. And I actually prefer Irving at basically what, $400 more expensive on DraftKings. All right, let's talk about Brooklyn and Atlanta. We'll spend some time here for sure. Brooklyn Nets favored by 9 at home. Imagine that. The Nets are 9-point favorites in 2019. And you know what? They're actually playing decent basketball. Actually, if the season ended today, they'd be 7th in the East. They'd be in the playoffs at 2 games below 500, 6-4 over their last 10. Not bad, huh? But they're also without Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. We expect to see Damari Carroll and Joe Harris back today. And on the other side, Kevin Huerter's probable. First of all, have you seen a starting lineup yet for Atlanta?
No, I haven't.
Okay. I mentioned this to you earlier today. With the way that they played yesterday, which was actually admirably well, given the matchup being like 15-point road dogs against Toronto and losing by 3 points, actually had a lead throughout most of that game. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jeremy Lin stick in the starting lineup. Maybe someone like DeAndre Bembry moves to the bench. Kevin Huerter stays in the lineup, but moves to the 3. Lin played really well, and it wasn't just that he was a temporary star or a spot start that gets like first quarter run and then comes out and doesn't come back in until 2 minutes left in the second quarter. We see that so often. He played 34 minutes, and he played 34 efficient minutes as a scorer and as a facilitator.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on what to think here because on one hand, you know, clearly it worked. He played really well, but on the other hand, you'd have to be an idiot to not have to not have known that would work anyway. And so
I know.
You know, I don't think that Lloyd Pierce
clear spark plug and he gets 15, 16 minutes per game. You're right.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I can't imagine he actually learned like that. It was shocking to him that worked.
Right. And they're tanking.
Right. So I don't know. Basically the way I'm treating it right now without a starting lineup is that I did give Lin a couple of more minutes alongside Trae Young, just because it gets him into some lineups for me, but it doesn't make him someone that I'm like really heavily reliant on. If he starts, then by all means, you know, give him the minutes he played last night. But for right now, without a lineup, it's kind of just a guessing game. So I'm just giving him, you know, a couple of extra minutes alongside Trae Young since that did work so well last night. And, you know, just going from there.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to pose the question because if Jeremy Lin starts, he's going to be one of my top values here, no question. And in a markedly better matchup than we had yesterday against Toronto. I mean, I loaded up on Lin yesterday, which means if we had a similar circumstance today, I'd be going right back to the well. Even on a slate that has a little bit more value, you're just getting enough production from him to feel good about it. Now, granted, he shot 8 for 10, and I believe he had 11 potential assists. So really, really efficient. And I don't necessarily expect that to continue. He had 11 rebound chances as well, though, and has always been a decent rebounder as a guard. I just think if he starts and you get those minutes, screw the efficiency against Brooklyn in a game that's got a 227 total. You just have to do it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And also it's worth pointing out as far as potential minutes alongside Trae Young, that Brooklyn's been running a ton, or I mean not a ton, but a lot of 3-guard lineups with Russell, Dinwiddie, and Napier. That makes it even easier for Jeremy Lin to get minutes.
All right. He says, Laffy, does daddy like? I don't feel comfortable saying that term. I'll leave that to Eddie. I don't feel comfortable with that. But I don't know. Does daddy like what? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, with the rest of this Atlanta squad, though, I think John Collins, who's seen his price drop $1,000 since last week, is in a pretty decent spot. And Dwayne Dedman, power forward eligibility, center eligibility. Yeah, he's got to fend off Alex Len, and that kind of sucks. But if he gets like 28 minutes here, you could see a really solid start from Dwayne Dedman. Brooklyn's just been ravaged by bigs this year. It's been a prime target all season long for us. They're giving up, I think, like the third most points, second most or most rebounds. It's been really bad against centers. So I like the front court for Atlanta here, and I don't think either of them are really overpriced, especially on DraftKings and on Yahoo. What are you doing outside of Jeremy Lin, who we might not even have interest in if we go back to the old starting lineup?
Right. Yeah, I was going to say that it's kind of site dependent here because Len is priced up on FanDuel, but he's only 4,500 on DraftKings. So I'll have him in some tournament lineups just because he's such a good producer when he gets the minutes. Dwayne Dedman, kind of the same way. Like he's underpriced on DraftKings at 5,200, especially because you can play him at power forward. And John Collins, I think, is very, very, very favorably priced on DraftKings. One of my higher owned plays once you pointed out to me that I had messed up my projection on him and he was too low. So yeah, I mean, all three of those guys I have interest in on DraftKings, especially Collins, but mixing in some Dedman and Len as well.
Agreed. Hey, by the way, we haven't gotten there yet, but Devin Booker's officially ruled out. I think we all expected that to be the case. I don't mind Atlanta. Now, are they playing their second of a back-to-back on the road? Are they 9-point dogs? Yeah, they are, but what are you going to do? That's why predicting blowouts gets you in trouble, because I don't think anyone expected a 3-point game between them and the Raptors yesterday, Adam, which is why we're going to talk about Brooklyn here. I'd love to get your take on Russell and the rest of this team, maybe even Ed Davis. If we have interest in some Atlanta players, that means we probably have a little bit of interest in Brooklyn as well.
Yeah, I have a lot of interest in Brooklyn. I have a lot of interest in anyone that's playing Atlanta usually. And
me too.
It's just really appealing price tags too. I mean, D'Angelo Russell playing 32 to 34 minutes, pretty much night in and night out now, almost a 30% usage rate with almost a 40% assist percentage over the last month. Just such a high upside player.
On the season, he has a 30% assist or usage rate and 37% assist rate, but I think it goes widely overlooked because of how volatile he is.
Yeah. And I think it's just, I don't know, like at least my kind of perception of him. I've always been a big D'Angelo Russell in DFS fan, but I always just think of him as like a scorer. So like every time I look at his assist percentage, I kind of do a double take. 40%.
No doubt. What were you saying? Go ahead though.
Yeah. So I mean, just saying, it's a phenomenal spot for him. He's a super high upside play. He's, point guard and shooting guard eligible on DraftKings, which is nice. But then Dinwiddie, he hasn't gotten the 30 minutes in a while. But even if I project him for about 28 minutes here at a cheap price tag, he's a good play for me. Shabazz Napier in 22 to 24 minutes projects as a pretty decent value play, especially if people are going to look to other guys like, Neto and potentially Jalen Brunson. I'll take 22 to 24 minutes of Napier against Atlanta, no problem. And that's without even mentioning, guys like Ed Davis, like you said, who at 3,600 or 3,800 does have upside. probably plays like 22 minutes, but they should be productive minutes in this spot. Yeah, there's really no way to go wrong with Brooklyn guys, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think the guys like Napier and Davis are more appealing to me because it's all comparative. It's all relative to the rest of the options here. Like a Jakob Poeltl, who I would take Davis over. I would take Davis over O'Quinn, who, as we've seen, really, I mean, yeah, he's in the rotation, but like 13, maybe 17 minutes. It's really not enough on a 10-gamer. Maybe you want to roll the dice in a couple lineups and hope that O'Quinn gets the run or just crushes in a short in a low amount of playing time, but that's risky. The thing with Davis is he's with no Hollis Jefferson. I expect Davis to get all of or almost all of the backup center minutes, and it's not like Jared Allen's playing time is especially secure. You know, look, Jared Allen's played 24 minutes in back-to-back games. Ed Davis has played 20 and 24 minutes. He could get up to 24. You could see an even split down the middle here. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen if the game stays close. He's a +1 per minute guy on the season. Like we've seen Davis go out there in 22 minutes and give you, a 10-10 or 10-12 double-double. It's not uncommon that he gets it done. And I mean, just his last game was 11 and 9, 7 and 13, his last 2 games. I don't think Davis is a bad play at all here at a cheap price. And of course, in case you were wondering, he's the dead man on Yahoo as well.
Of course he is. But yeah. I haven't projected for like 24.5 DraftKings points in 22 minutes. So clearly a productive player, especially when you factor in that he has the upside to play more minutes. Right.
Oh, hey, by the way, I wanted to comment on your Dinwiddie comment when you mentioned he hadn't been getting up to 30 minutes. I think this is just a symptom of the way Kenny Atkinson runs these rotations. If Dinwiddie comes out early on and he's crushing, he's probably gonna get additional run, take a few minutes away from Russell. And if you look recently, he's been okay, but you're not seeing phenomenal production or phenomenal permanent production or efficiency from Dinwiddie. He comes out here against Atlanta and he knocks down 5 of his first 8 shots. My guess is that we see Dinwiddie's minutes increase. So that's kind of how I look at it. And I think at that price, I have no problem getting some of him in tournaments.
Yeah, that's how I view it too.
You have anybody else from this game? I think we've talked about a lot of players here. It's a pretty appealing game.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much anyone from this game that gets in my lineups is fine, but Collins, Russell, Dinwiddie are the priorities at the top, and then Napier and Davis's value.
Yeah, and I'll point it out, if Lynn starts, he's going to be a priority for me.
Yeah.
Davis is a value play. I know you just mentioned him there, but I really don't mind him if you're looking to get cheap there. And I believe he has power forward eligibility, right? No, he doesn't anymore. He did just like a week ago. That's unfortunate. Would have made things a little easier. But center's not as deep today as it has been. Let's talk about Memphis and San Antonio, Adam. The Memphis Grizzlies are 3-point dogs at home, and they are a 205 total. Well, you had DM me earlier today, and I'm gonna read your direct message from Slack. You said, so around what time was it today? So you said, I'm not sure if I love or hate how cheap the Memphis San Antonio game is on DraftKings. And what I take from that is you don't know if you love it because they're all so cheap. You don't know if you hate it because they're all so cheap, and it'll force you to play some of them.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about crunching lineups on DraftKings and getting a bunch of guys from a game between the Grizzlies and the Spurs that has a 206 total. I have managed to get a little bit less of this game as I've kind of adjusted projections throughout the day. But the point remains that, especially on DraftKings where you have Jaren Jackson at 5,400 and Marcus All at 6,500 from Memphis, you have DeRozan at 8K flat, you have Aldridge at 7,400 from San Antonio. I'm getting a ton of those two Memphis guys. I'm getting a good amount, but a little bit less of the San Antonio guys. Good players that, even though the matchup isn't good, it's two tough defenses. It's a slow-paced game. Jaren Jackson should, if he can stay out of foul trouble, play north of 30 minutes here, especially if JaMychal Green doesn't play. He's questionable last I saw. But even if Green's in, I expect this to be a game where Jackson gets some minutes as the backup center because San Antonio basically is going to have Jakob Poeltl and then Pau Gasol probably play like 8 minutes is what they've been doing. And then the rest be LaMarcus Aldridge. I don't think Joakim Noah is going to be out there against Aldridge. So I expect the Aldridge minutes to basically be split between Gasol and Jaren Jackson. So I think that it's a good spot for Jackson. It's a really nice price for Jackson. And then Marc Gasol at 6,500. It's just really, really difficult to ignore him at that price tag.
That's crazy cheap there. 6,500. I mean, I know he hasn't been great, but my God, I mean, that is crazy that he's that cheap. Somebody just made a gravity bond comment. Yeah, 6,500 is very inexpensive. My thing though, to looking at the San Antonio side, and I pointed this out to you earlier. Look, I don't have an issue with somebody like DeRozan, and you can pretty much assume that DeRozan is going to be, I don't know, right now he's got 13 these ownership projections are updated. So let's see what DeRozan's at on DraftKings right now. DeRozan is projected at 9%. So not high, not super low, not really a big deal. But I look at the rest of shooting guard, man, and there are just a lot of players that I really like here. And if anything, it'd probably be more Marc Gasol for me than guys like DeRozan and Aldridge. But because you do have some interesting, since you do have interest in these players, who do you like the most?
Yeah, DeRozan the most. We've seen him have about a 31% usage rate alongside Aldridge without DeRozan on the floor without Rudy Gay on the floor this season. Should play somewhere in the 36. Should be somewhere in the 36 to 38 minute range, assuming this game stays competitive. It's obviously a really difficult matchup. He just played terribly in this game earlier this week or last week. So, it's not a spot that you're super confident, but there's no doubting his upside at only $8,000 on DraftKings, especially with small forward eligibility as well. So I'm getting the more DeRozan than I am Aldridge, but have some Aldridge, have some Jakob Poeltl. Just kind of really cheap price tags all the way around in this game.
I just went in ghost mode for a second. That was kind of weird.
I saw that.
My camera just, All right, we're back. Anything else from this one? I know you like Jaren Jackson a lot. EMAC, witness protection plan for Laffy. Yeah, that's it. We'll have to change my voice too. Jaren Jackson obviously has the upside pretty much every night, or he can just burn you. I know a whole lot about that. I still don't see it. I think you're going to probably have more exposure to this game than I will from the sounds of it right now. What are you looking at ownership on DraftKings? How much like Jackson do you have right now on your initial crunches?
So I ran a bunch of lineups and I have my exposure capped kind of weird. So the percentages don't mean much, but as far as who's showing up in those lineups, like Jaren Jackson's one of my top owned guys with like James Harden and Marc Gasol.
All right.
And Kelly Oubre.
Well, you had a lot of Oubre yesterday too.
Yeah, going right back there.
I think you have to. We'll get there in a minute. It could go south quickly, but you kind of don't have a choice. Talk about Houston and Milwaukee too. Milwaukee Bucks on the road are actually favored by 1.5, 228 point total against the Houston Hardens, and which is what they are at this point. I know that on the surface people don't like targeting Milwaukee, and I'm going to let you give the counter or the devil's advocate argument here that we talked about today, but I'm going to give the plus side, and I'll let you give the possible downside. Whether or not you believe it, that would be the one way that Harden could struggle. But you look at this season, not only is Milwaukee playing way up in pace, they play the 5th fastest pace in the entire league. They allow the 15th most points. So even though they have a quality defense, the elevated pace, it's similar to the Warriors over the past several years where you have a top 5 defensive rating, but you play so fast that, not including this year as much, just all around, but you play so much that you feel so fast that the points per game is going to increase. But unlike the Warriors, where they gave up a lot of easy shots around the rim and in the paint because they'd come back and just blast you with 3-pointers, the Bucks have actually struggled more so where it comes to 3-pointers. They're allowing more 3-point attempts to than any other team in the league. They're allowing the 10th highest 3-point percentage as well. And James Harden's averaging over 17 3-point attempts over his last 8. So not only does he get to the line at a ridiculous clip, but he's jacking up, I won't say an unprecedented, but a ridiculous amount of shots from beyond the arc. And this game's got a 228 total, should be very close. And he's still not pulling far enough away from the guys like Davis and Giannis to where I say, yeah, I think I'll go elsewhere. Go ahead, give the devil's advocate here.
Right. So the counter argument as far as the matchup goes is that if they wanted to, if the Bucks stick Giannis on Harden, that's like as terrifying a matchup as you can get, because he's obviously athletic enough to defend Harden and stay with Harden, and he's got the length to where it would be tough for Harden to even get off his step back threes over Giannis if Giannis is on him. I don't think that happens the entire game. Like, you could have made that same argument for the matchup against Kevin Durant with Golden State, but you see coaches be hesitant to do that because Giannis would have to expend so much energy on the defensive end if he's defending James Harden every time down the floor. You also get the foul risk defending Harden. It's kind of like LeBron James. People say LeBron James is a bad defender. Even like years ago, he's not. It's not that he was a bad defender. It's that he just used all his energy on the offensive end and just didn't do it on the defensive end. If he had to defend you, he could. And that's kind of the way I view this. Like, Giannis could really give Harden trouble, but I just doubt that that's the game plan, is for Giannis to just spend the entire game chasing James Harden around.
Right, because does Mike Budenholzer want to risk the foul trouble, which is significant when it comes to James Harden, and does he want to limit Giannis's offensive potential by putting him on Harden? You might say, oh, that's not possible, but as you just pointed out, guarding James Harden 101 is not exactly a walk in the park. Like, that is, just ask 18 players over the last 2 weeks that have landed on their ass and then try to recover and still get made to look a fool. Jamal Murray being the leading candidate there. Could it happen? It could. Am I willing to take that risk? I am, because even if all of this happens, he still is the highest usage player on the slate by what? 13%? 12%? Seriously.
Yeah, he's at like 46 something percent since the Chris Paul injury.
Right. And the next closest guy, I'll put high end around 34, 35. So assist rate, highest on per minute production, highest on the slate. Minutes, one of the top 3 highest players on the slate. So that pretty much tells you all you need to know. And by the way, on FanDuel, he's only $100 more than Anthony Davis.
I actually have Davis projected for like half a point more than Harden on FanDuel.
Well, my problem with that one is that I can rely pretty comfortably on this game to stay close. Again, I don't like predicting blowouts, but when I'm on the fence or if I have to make a decision, to me, I do use that to break the tie. And the Pelicans are 14-point favorites. The Cleveland Cavaliers have lost each of their last 4 games by an average margin of 24 points. So we'll get there, but I have some concerns that game is over long before it starts, with Cleveland on the second of a back-to-back on the road, potentially without Larry Nance. It's just ugly, but I'll hold that off for now. Let's finish out on this Houston game and talk to me about where we're going here outside of James Harden.
Yes, I mean, Harden, obviously the most appealing play there. Capella, if you get there, I think it's fine. It's just kind of tough because you have Marc Gasol at such a cheap price tag. You have Rudy Gobert, who we'll talk about, at a cheap price tag. So really just secondary plays behind Harden. If you get some PJ Tucker, if you get some Gerald Green, I think it's fine.
The other side, the other side, by the way, Chris Middleton is $6,400 on DraftKings. That's pretty inexpensive for a guy that first of all, recently his shooting has definitely improved. He's shooting almost 59% over his last 6 games, 50% from 3. I'd expect to see his minutes up around 33 to 35 tonight. What do you make of Middleton and the rest of this Bucks squad?
Yeah, I like Middleton. The price tag came down when he was shooting poorly and just really hasn't rebounded yet. Assuming this game is competitive and it should be a good game, like you said, you probably get 33, 34 minutes from Middleton. And I think that, he makes for a good play. I think Malcolm Brogdon's a good play. We've really seen him be productive over, the last month, going on a month and a half now, being near close to a point per minute player. And people just still don't really roster him because that's not who he was in previous seasons. But the usage has gone up. The productivity's gone up. I think that he's still pretty fairly priced.
All right. Yeah, not a game I have a ton of options from, but kind of as we mentioned before we got into the breakdowns of all of these games, that each game has at least one or two guys. And for me, Harden and Middleton make the most sense here. You can look at secondary options, as you pointed out, and someone like Capella or Malcolm Brogdon. I guess I have to ask you about Giannis. It's funny. Did you even mention Giannis?
No, I didn't.
And I only say that because I don't know if this were a month ago, there's no way his name wouldn't have come up in the game. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it is at least worth pointing out that finally he's at a different price point. Like he's 11-1 on DraftKings,
right?
Compared, he's like $1,000 less than Harden is, and he has played more minutes his last couple of games, so it's good to see him at least trending in that direction. It's just still really tough. He keeps being on these slates with Harden and Davis, and those are two guys who you can project to play more minutes than Giannis and to produce at the same or greater clip. So they're like the only two guys in the league where Giannis just kind of doesn't compare.
All right. Crazy, but I agree with you. It's not to say he can't still put up big numbers, but again, I'm going to go hard in here. Do you have any exposure to Giannis as of now?
Well, I don't think I did. I had a good amount of Harden, a good amount of Davis. I don't think I had Giannis.
All right. I guess we can move on, huh?
Let's talk about if you're game stacking, I think you can get both of them in some lineups though.
Yeah, I talked about about that with Dan Stratford today on the Early Bird podcast. Or now our faces are on screen, which is kind of weird, but fine. I'll let Dan do his thing. It feels like every time you play two elite, top shelf players in the same game, and again, this is anecdotal, but I'm saying it anyway because I can. It feels like every time both of them do not meet expectations. Not that both of them, but how do I say the two of them, one of them feels like very rarely both of them do. Just saying.
Right. Right. You play Giannis and Harden expecting them to go off, and then it turns into like Harden versus Middleton just jacking threes or something.
Yeah. Anecdotal. I'm not saying to base your decisions on that, but it is kind of strange the way it's played out. Hey, also, this game has a really high 228 total, which is pretty surprising for a Houston team that is really, really down in pace this season. I mean, even over the last month, they're still a bottom 5 team when it comes to pace of play. So I was pleasantly surprised to see a 228 total on this game, which is right now the highest on the entire slate, not including Washington, Philadelphia. All right, let's talk about New Orleans, Cleveland. I mentioned to you that since Tristan Thompson's return in 4 games, they have literally been losing by an average of 24 points. It's terrible. And last game, they managed to get it close enough in the fourth quarter to where starters had to stay in, which was nice to see because otherwise it would have been really ugly. But I mean, just look at that. 115 to 123, 98 or 133 to 98. 117 to 91, 117 to 92. They lost to Atlanta by 3, then 118 to 94. This is a really, really bad basketball team. If you put them up against Atlanta right now, and we just did a week or so ago, I put it this way. There is not a team in the NBA that I would pick Cleveland to beat straight up right now.
I don't think there is either.
JJ Redick is ruled out, by the way. Rodney Hood is ruled out. Larry Nance is out, and Otto Porter will play. Just a little housekeeping there. Cool. That was just in time for us to break this one down. So basically, even Larry Nance is now out too. So you're working with like Chetty Osman and Jordan Clarkson as the guys that are carrying the load tonight. SJM says, so are you saying Cleveland is due? That's one way to put it. No, I'm not saying on the second of a road back-to-back as 14-point dogs that they're just really bad. I mean, Pelicans aren't good either, but they're a lot better than Cleveland, a whole lot better than Cleveland. They have one of the best players in the world. So go ahead here, man. I talked enough.
No, I mean, obviously Cleveland's really bad. They're on the road on a back-to-back. The flip side of that is I don't, neither one of us like really talking about blowouts. And even yesterday, I kind of, was like, okay, Atlanta going into Toronto at full strength. Like, I'll go ahead and knock a couple minutes off my projections for guys. And, obviously if you had Kawhi Leonard, congrats, you got a bunch of money. So that's the flip side. And if you looked at Kawhi's ownership, like, he was so much lower owned than I think that he would have been had that spread been closer.
100%. Oh yeah.
Right. And so it's, and that's kind of always my second argument with the blowouts is even if you're pretty confident that the game's going to blow out, everyone else is that much more confident too. And it drives the ownership down. So it all just, to me, kind of comes out in the wash, and you still just end up with, Anthony Davis in a really good spot. Obviously, like I said before, more site dependent for me. I like him more on FanDuel, but even on the other side, like, it's a pace up game for Cleveland, and you have guys that need to play minutes with Hood out, with Nance out. Like, you should get 30 plus minutes from Jordan Clarkson. As long as this game stays competitive, you should get around 30.
Very cheap as well, by the way, especially on FanDuel. He's in the deep dive today, and I warn of the potential blowout risk, but as you're getting to now, a guy like Thompson could easily pay this price tag off. It's just, you have to consider that it could be over very early. Just don't base all of your decisions on that. Sorry, go ahead.
Right, yeah, like there's certainly risk, but the price tags that come with these Cleveland guys, it's the first like appealing matchup they've had in a while, and the price tags that come with these guys makes it so they have legitimate upside in tournaments, and people aren't going to go to them. So, I don't have a problem with Clarkson or Burks. I really like Thompson, who you mentioned. He was out of his mind before he got injured. Played 35 minutes last night. He's already played a back-to-back since coming back from his injury. He played like 26 and 27 minutes in those two games, so we didn't see him be limited any more than he was. Even if I project him for around 32 minutes here, I get him outperforming his price tag.
So do I. Writing him up is tough. Talking about him, promoting playing Thompson is tough just because how things could turn out. And his minutes have been down drastically in these games that blow out. But as we saw yesterday, and this game was a blowout for, like, seriously, they were down by 20 after one. They were down by 20 at halftime. And then just look at the flow of this game. Even after three quarters, it was looking ugly. And then they brought it close enough where, everyone got their normal fourth quarter run, and Thompson got his 35 minutes. And as you said, he's already played a back-to-back. Actually, it's his second back-to-back in the matter of a week, or less than a week. So I'm going to have some Tristan Thompson. I'm going to have some Jordan Clarkson. I'm a little nervous about it, but kind of comes with the territory, and to some extent it's baked into the price tags a little bit. But another thing too is, if you are looking at this game from a positive standpoint and not okay, it's over before it starts, the Pelicans defensively have really just not been very good this year. They are a below average team defensively. They play at a elevated pace. It is a good matchup on paper outside of the 14-point spread for Cleveland. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Before we move on, I want to ask you about this, though. So Thompson's 6K flat on DraftKings. Not bad at all. But Gasol's 6,500. And the center position isn't nearly as priced up as we see on FanDuel. On FanDuel, Thompson's 62, really nice. But then somebody like Gasol is 76. So where you have only a $500 difference between Thompson and Gasol on DraftKings, you have a $1,400 difference on FanDuel. What do you make of that? Do you have more interest in Thompson on FanDuel than you would on DraftKings because of Marc Gasol?
So it's on FanDuel, obviously the pricing difference makes it appealing. It makes it a lot easier to get to Thompson just from a pure projection standpoint. On DraftKings, where I'm crunching lineups, I'm getting more Gasol. I'm getting plenty of Thompson too, but I'm getting more Gasol. But when I actually enter lineups, I factor ownership into as well. So there's a chance that I end up with more Thompson than Gasol simply as an ownership pivot. But that's like, it's just two completely different things, because on DraftKings, if you're playing more Thompson than Gasol, or if you're playing Thompson over Gasol, it's with the intention of making that pivot. Whereas on FanDuel, it just projects totally differently because it's such a big price difference.
Yeah. Right now, our ownership projections have on DraftKings have Marc Gasol at 17% projected ownership, Tristan Thompson at 4%. On FanDuel, we have Tristan Thompson with 6% projected ownership, and Marc Gasol at, where's he at here? I'm assuming he's still relatively low at 7%. So not a big difference. So yeah, we already know what the injury situation is here, and that is going to open a lot of things up. It's also going to make them more blowout prone as well. And this can go one way or the other. But if like yesterday, you had a good reference with Atlanta, if like yesterday it stays close, then you've probably struck gold.
That's right. All. And this game's even more appealing than that one was, in that, like, taking Atlanta guys against Toronto, even if the game stays close, normally it's not going to really net you that much. Right. But like you said, bad Pelicans defense, huge pace-up spot. There's a chance that this game just shoots out and, Cleveland keeps it close because the Pels are so bad defensively. You
never know. Cleveland playing at a bottom 3 pace over the last 30 days. On the season, overall this year, Cleveland plays the second slowest pace in the league with 96.6 possessions per 48, while the Pelicans are at 103. Big pace-up spot, no question. By the way, if you want to check out the ownership projections at awesomeo.com and everything else that we have projections for, each and every sport, the lineup builder, Alex Baker, Awesomeo himself, his projections and his rankings, and our Fantasy Cruncher premium add-on. And of course, Slack chat, which is going around the clock. You can talk really any sport with pretty much anyone all day long. Right now, we're doing 50% off the first month. If you use the promo code Deeper Dive, all one word, Deeper Dive, when you sign up at awesomeo.com, you click Join Now on the homepage. Very simple. Click your plan and make sure to select the Fantasy Cruncher add-on as well. And then when you put in all of your information, you will see where you can use a promo code. Use the promo code Deeper Dive, one word, to get 50% off. It's a really solid deal. Your first month at awesomeo.com. So hopefully we will see you there. Adam, let's move on here. Talk a little bit about this next game. Dallas and Phoenix. I think this could be trappish in some spots, but still kind of have to go there. Phoenix, second of a back-to-back too. A few teams, a decent amount of teams actually, playing their second of a back-to-back. Home game in Phoenix yesterday, road game in Dallas today. Mavericks are 10-point favorites. Doncic is questionable, but what's that really mean at this point? He's questionable every day. Dennis Smith, questionable. That actually means something in terms of he might not play. Who knows? And then on the other side, Devin Booker's been ruled out. And we saw Josh Jackson play 30 minutes or 31 minutes yesterday. We saw DeAnthony Melton actually have a very well-rounded game. I don't expect 6 stocks again, but a very well-rounded game in 31 minutes. But the story of the night was definitely Kelly Oubre. And a lot of people, went heavy on Sacramento, Phoenix, real heavy on them, real stoked about having everyone for Sacramento, Phoenix, but didn't have Kelly Oubre. And he was definitely the deciding factor in this game with 26 points, 9 for 15 shooting in 30 minutes, 47 fantasy points on DraftKings. He's still $3,800 on DraftKings. He's still $3,700 on FanDuel, and he is still $12 on Yahoo. Floor is yours, guy.
Yeah, so the price tag on Oubre is what makes me just go right back to him here. He's obviously, we know from his time with Washington that he's capable of going out, and when he is aggressive, he can score and he can do a lot of stuff. The scary thing from yesterday's game is that he only played 4 or 5 minutes alongside Mikal Bridges, and Bridges has been playing 30-plus minutes more often than not. So that's concerning, but at the same time, Quincy AC.
So I was just saying, and he closed over Bridges towards the end of the game, which could very well not be the case if he's not firing and making every shot tonight.
Right, exactly. But also Quincy AC came out of God knows where and played 7 or 8 minutes. That doesn't necessarily have to happen again. Kelly Oubre can play the 4 in the spot against Dallas. So, maybe Bridges gets more minutes and Oubre just plays alongside him more. There's just still more upside than risk for me at Kelly Oubre's price tag, 37 on FanDuel, where you can drop him if you have to, 38 on DraftKings. It's still just tough for him to disappoint. He's got about a 24% usage rate without Devin Booker on the floor since joining Phoenix. He does enough stuff when he's out there that the price tag I think is just still too cheap. So I'll go right back to him. As far as the other guys, Josh Jackson, I think still a perfectly fine play. TJ Warren should play around 36 minutes again, has up around a 26% usage rate without Booker on the floor. DeAndre Ayton has been an absolute monster. It's still, I agree with you that it's kind of scary, the road back-to-back at Dallas, but Dallas also not a very good team. And you just have pretty appealing price points on a lot of these Phoenix guys. D'Anthony Melton as well. Basically just he split the point guard minutes with Jamal Crawford yesterday. That bodes really well for him that he should get up over 30 minutes again.
I agree with almost everything you said outside of I just don't really see myself getting to Ayton here. I don't think he's a poorly priced, but pretty much I don't love this spot. I just don't really see myself getting there. And a lot of it has to do with, look, I know he had those three really big games, 3 in like 5 games where he was really, really solid, but I'm still expecting around the 38, 40 or so fantasy points from him. And a few options at center that I just like more today, but look, I'm going to go back to Josh Jackson. I expect him to get pretty sizable run regardless of the situation. D'Anthony Melton, I have plenty of D'Anthony Melton. Why would you not? If he's going to get the run, then I'm going to go back there. And when it comes to Oubre, you pointed out, and I mentioned this earlier before we got to this game, there are some ways that this could not go particularly well, but Kelly Oubre's 3,800, 3,700 compared to like 52, 5,300 for similar guys getting similar minutes. If he gets even 28 minutes here, I think there's still a very good chance that Kelly Oubre is not going to hurt you. And if you look at since he came to Phoenix, his usage really isn't bad. I think it's around like 23% or so with Booker off the court. I can deal with that. I'm okay with that. Plus, he's going to play like 10 minutes with the second unit, whereas usage is around 26%. So pretty much tells you all you need to know. TJ Warren 7,100 on DraftKings, but what do you make of him on FanDuel at 6,700? Is that spot that you might go to?
Yeah, I like the price tag there, especially because small forward's just not the strongest position. He obviously is a capable scorer. In terms of Phoenix guys, I have him when factoring in price, I have him behind Jackson and Oubre and Melton. But in terms of small forwards, I still think he's a good play.
Yeah, I think he's perfectly fine as well. I also think at 6,900, DeAndre Jordan's not the worst play either when it comes to Dallas, because I know he's taken like a small step back this year, but this Phoenix team, even with DeAndre Ayton looking like he's improving to some extent, they've still been real bad against centers, right? Most points allowed to centers. You say, okay, well, DeAndre Jordan doesn't really shoot. No, he doesn't. But Phoenix is also allowing the 5th highest field goal percentage at the rim, more points in the paint than any other team, and the 3rd most offensive rebounds to opposing centers. So he could have a lot of opportunities to get putbacks here. I think a decent game could be in the cards for the 2nd best rebounder in the game, and Phoenix has caught up a ton of rebounds on the glass to centers. So if I'm looking at Dallas, DeAndre Jordan at 6,900 to me is still in play here. I'm not really sure I'd go anywhere else at Dallas. What are you doing with the Mavericks against the Suns?
I like Luka a lot. If Dennis Smith Jr. is in, I don't really care because Luka's got over 30% usage rate since Dennis Smith Jr. came back. If Dennis Smith Jr. is out, you just see the offense run through Luka even more. A 32% assist percentage over the last month without Dennis Smith Jr. on the floor to go along with a 30% usage rate. So, I really like Luka, assuming, the questionable tag means he's playing. Yeah.
Questionable means doubtful would mean out would mean he's playing. I mean, he has a tag every single game. I don't really think, and any practice yesterday too. So this seems really just like a formality at this point. I don't have a lot of Luka right now, but I will have some DeAndre. I could see John. He's disappointed a lot this year. His shot volume has been down, pretty disappointing, but just a really good spot. Good spot for Doncic too, no question. All right, Utah, Orlando. We got 3 games to go here. Then we'll turn it over, of course, to the live before a lot crew, as we do each and every day. It's Wednesday, which means that Eddie and Chris will be taking you up till 7 p.m. Eastern. So with Utah, we've got no Ricky Rubio. We've got no Dante Exum. We've got no Cephalosha. And we're going to see a lot of responsibility heaped on Mitchell, probably even more as a facilitator. But even somebody like Raul Neto has a 27% assist rate this year and is actually not the worst facilitator, whereas Mitchell, even when given the additional responsibility, has really not fared all that well as a passer. That's not to say I don't like him, but I wouldn't be surprised if Neto plays 32 minutes here and has decent assist totals and pays off that price point. On the contrary, though, Adam, we know that he's going to be pretty popular tonight against Orlando.
Yeah, I'm not really getting to a ton of him. I'm certainly not on FanDuel where he's 5,900.
No, but that's just crazy. I would hope that everybody knows I'm not talking about 5,900 on FanDuel.
But yeah, I mean, even on DraftKings, just not getting a ton of him. I do have him projected for 32 minutes. I think that he's a perfectly reasonable play. I just expect the ball to be in Donovan Mitchell and Joe Ingles' hands a lot. So not really sure, how productive he's going to be. I have him projected for like 25 DraftKings points, which is fine. It's nothing special. And if he's going to be popular, then it's a spot where I'm okay pivoting in tournaments. But I do like Mitchell. I think he plays close to 38 minutes here. Since last season without Rubio on the floor, 32% usage rate, almost a 22% assist percentage, has averaged about 1.1 DraftKings points per minute. So not quite the production that we would hope, like you were saying, but I think the opportunity is certainly there for him. I think that he's, a perfectly fine play. Joe Ingles as well, 28% usage rate without Rubio on the floor with small forward eligibility, I think is not a priority, but he's a secondary option for me.
So check this out. I think you might be a little bit surprised by this. Last game on the 7th, where Rubio played 5 minutes, Raul Neto played 29 minutes. So again, I'm putting around 32. He was third on the team with 61 touches. Joe Ingles touched the ball 50 times. Now, I'm not saying that this means the same is going to happen today, but Raul Neto was actually pretty involved. Gobert led the team with 77. Donovan Mitchell saw 75 touches in that game, and Raul Neto was third with 61, and he played significantly fewer minutes in that game. So he played 29. Donovan Mitchell played 40 minutes, and Rudy Gobert in that same game played 39 minutes. So when on the court, Raul Neto was really seeing equally as much opportunity, at least. Now, how valuable were these touches? Well, that's a different story. But if you take a look at some of the other stats, when it comes to someone like Neto, or it comes to actually just Neto, potential assists in that game were leading the team, 15 potential assists in 29 minutes. The dude got opportunities there, was touching the ball, and had a lot of facilitating responsibility. So I actually think Neto is going to have more work here than you think. Are you with me? You're muted. You're muted. Haven't heard a word. Start over from my last comment.
Yeah. I mean, you could certainly be right. I'm not projecting Neto like too high. I think that he played.
I could be wrong too, because it's Raul Neto.
Right. Yeah. I think that he's someone that whatever of him I get, I'm fine with. But if he is going to be really popular, I think there's enough ways to pivot on the slate that I don't need to be overweight on him. Gobert, I think, is a really good play too, getting away from the ball handlers. He's just been so good, all season long, but especially over the last month, averaging about 1.25 fantasy points per minute. I think he plays probably a couple more minutes here. I think that his playing time last game was in part a result of Tabo being out. You had to have Favors play more at the 4, unless you're going to play Crowder a bunch of, over 30 minutes. So I think that projecting Gobert for around 36 minutes is very reasonable here. And the price tag is just a little bit cheaper than it should be still.
Yeah, I agree too. And obviously, if the purpose for no Neto is ownership, then totally get that. He will have popularity here. I just thought it was 61 touches and 15 potential assists in 29 minutes. Those are numbers that I like to see, which means I don't think he's the worst chalk you could get to. But hey, Rudy Gobert has actually seen surprising opportunity to dish out some assists in these situations before. So I agree that Gobert could have a pretty well-rounded line here as well. And you're not overpaying for him whatsoever. And Joe Ingles, of course, should get some of that work as well. Now, on the other side of this game, what are you doing with Orlando, if anything?
Not much of anything. Like Vooch, if you get there, it's fine. But once again, you just have so many cheaper are in that are in good spots where Vooch has to really have a big game against Gobert and the Jazz for you to be glad that you have him. And then you also have Embiid at a little bit more expensive price tag. So it's tough for me to really get to Vooch as much as I like him as a player. Beyond that, there's just nothing that really looks all that appealing to me here.
People in chat were talking about Royce O'Neal. Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah, I haven't projected for like 20 minutes. I think I would have to project him for like 46 to start getting to him.
Sean says Neto is Trost Chalk in the matchup. Perfectly fine with me, dude. I'm not saying you have to play him. I don't think that your lineups are going to be won or lost on Raul Neto, but you can take the numbers that I gave you and do what you want with them. 32 minutes for a guy that should actually get opportunity as a ball handler playing on a team that severely lacks playmakers. You could do a lot worse than that. This is different than Jalen Brunson playing 30 minutes. I can assure you of that. That's all I'm saying, pal.
Yeah, I have. Right. I would rather play Neto at 4,300 or whatever than Brunson at 36 or whatever he is.
Yeah, of course. Portland and Chicago. This is probably the first game that we get to where I say I just don't have much. The Blazers are 10-point favorites, 208 total at home against the Bulls. I'm sure we could make decent arguments for guys like Nurkic on DraftKings or so, and Lillard at a pretty reasonable price. But I don't know how much of anybody I'm going to get here. Oh, and Mo Harkless is out for what that's worth.
So there is one thing that I do think is interesting about Harkless being out, other than the fact that you can, punt Evan Turner on FanDuel where you can drop his terrible score anyway. But so we've seen when Harkless goes down in the last few games where Harkless either hasn't started or he's gotten hurt, partway through the game. When the half that he doesn't play, like last game in the second half, Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum were staggered. The couple games ago when Harkless was out, they were staggered again. So I'm actually bumping up CJ McCollum a bit here because I do think that he sees minutes with that second unit since Harkless is out, just the way that the rotations run. So I think that not really a necessity on DraftKings, but on FanDuel where you have to roster the two shooting guards and he's, like $6,800. I think he's actually a pretty reasonable option here. Just keep in mind that Chicago is playing much better defensively. They are playing at a slow pace. I just think that McCollum is in a more productive spot for this game than he is in most games this year.
I don't hate Markkanen just because he's cheap. And that's pretty much. Yeah, and pretty much for the same reason, right? You're not going to pay a premium for these guys. All these guys are pretty much secondary or tertiary plays for me, though.
Yeah, there's like three guys from each team, like Levine, Markkanen, and Dom, right. And then McCollum, Lillard, and Nurkic. Not mentioning the Evan Turner value again. I think it's fine on FanDuel, but if I get those guys in tournament lineups, like I think they clearly have upside. It's just that if I had to rank them at their prices, like if I have to rank, $8,000 Nurkic, $7,500 Gobert, and $6,500 Gasol, I'd be lying if I told you like to play Nurkic a ton.
Right, man. I wish Bobby Portis was locked into say 25 minutes.
Yeah,
because his usage is absurd. Yeah. Like he comes out there, he jacks up 14 shots and goes back to the bench. Like oh, they're phenomenal. I wouldn't be. You really. It's tough to get there, and it's not the greatest spot either. But man, if you told me he was playing 25, like locked into 25 minutes tonight at $4,700, I would definitely have interest in Bobby Portis.
Yeah, I accidentally had him projected for 25 minutes when I was first making my crunches, and I was trying to figure out why the hell I was getting so much Bobby Portis, and then I figured it out. But
you have him projected at like 37 fantasy points.
Right? Yeah, well, I thought I'd project him for 20 minutes. I'm like, how the hell do I have him at 29 fantasy points?
I know, it's crazy. Hell, even at 47 today, I wouldn't be surprised to see Portis put up decent numbers, but you still run the risk of seeing less than 20 minutes, and that kind of sucks. All right, let's finish it out with the Lakers in Detroit. Lakers 2-point favorites, 215.5 total. Yeah, I mentioned this to you today. I think you were a bit surprised by it. So was I. Since LeBron has been out, the Lakers rank third in defensive efficiency, and 30th in offensive efficiency, dead last, playing the league's fastest pace as well. That's pretty wild, man.
I'm going to attribute all of that to Lonzo Ball. The defense is good because Lonzo's good. They're playing fast because Lonzo's fast. 100%. And the offense sucks because everyone around Lonzo sucks.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, guys like Kuzma, 3 for 20 4 for 20 shooting doesn't help. I'll let you close this out. I'll just give you my take and then you can finish it out. I think Ingram on FanDuel is still very much in play. I've said it a lot. The potential assist, the rebound opportunities are both way higher than what he's seeing actually in the results. His usage leads the league with Kuzma since LeBron's went down. Good spot there. On the other side, I like Drummond quite a bit on DraftKings. I like Blake as well. I don't think I'll be playing both in the same lineup, but the Lakers have really struggled against opposing centers this season, and I expect that to continue tonight. Go ahead, Adam.
With you on Drummond. Blake, if I get him, I get him, but Drummond's the one that I actually like more. From the Lakers side, I really like Kuzma. I think especially his $7,100 price tag on FanDuel is appealing. From Detroit, you have cheap price tags on guys like Reggie Bullock and Reggie Jackson that, if you want to mix them into some tournament lineups, that's fine, but they probably shouldn't be like core plays for you. And then, Ingram, Ball, Josh Hart, all should play 36 plus minutes. The price tags have caught up to, I think, pretty close to where they should be. Not to say that there isn't some upside. They're just not really easy plays like they were for the first week or so when LeBron was out. But, yeah, so I really like Drummond. I really like Kuzma. And then whatever I get of the other guys, I'm cool with.
All right. And I'll add in again, Ingram on FanDuel at 6,900. I prefer him over TJ Warren for what that's worth at a similar cost. I think that'll do it here. It's always a blast. We appreciate you guys hanging out. This has been the Deeper Dive. If you appreciate the show and you want to see more of it, please support us by hitting us with a thumbs up and liking the video, subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you know when all of our streams are going to drop. As always, good luck. Adam and I will see you back here tomorrow on the Deeper Dive for Thursday's slate. Good luck tonight, everyone.